Mr. Little, the second question. The Ventura County Transportation Commission has placed on the ballot a half-cent sales tax measure, Measure AA. Do you favor the tax increase to help fix our roads?
Well, I'm a member of VCTC. I represent the city on that body, and we did a great deal of study before we ever came forward with the proposal that's on the ballot. Yes, I do favor it, primarily because as someone who's kind of a pragmatist, I've looked around and see if well, first of all, we got a 101 freeway that is becomes kind of gridlock starting about, now it used to start about 5 o'clock, now it starts about 3:30, maybe 3 o'clock. And I look at that and say we need to improve this road. How are we going to do it? And it's going to cost about $900 million to do the complete road, widening it to 4 lanes and with auxiliary lanes between intersections, interchanges. And there's no money for that in the community. State highway funds have been going down because the gasoline has been going down in terms of demand because of electric cars and hybrids and so forth. The gas tax, which has been relied on for 100 years in this country to fund highways, is just declining. The Congress can't fund it any longer with just strictly highway funds, gas tax funds. They have to use general government revenues to help fund the highway program. So what we are asking for is a half-cent sales tax. It will cost everyone that use about $40, $50 a year. About 30% of it will be paid for by people coming through and doing business in Ventura County, and it will over a period of time rebuild the freeways and help the cities build their structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Mr. Lomer.
I'm opposed to Measure AA, and here's why. If you read the measure on keepvcmoving.org, first of all, it talked about a sound wall. It talked about water runoff. I called Alan, a gentleman who's in charge of that, and he said there's nothing on the books to build center lanes as far as rideshare. I got to tell you, this is the most ridiculous thing that's come across, and politicians are pushing it. You know, only 20% goes to the freeway. It's a 30-year tax, and 50% goes to the city. You already pay taxes for services. This week, when we had other debates, Kevin and other people up here, Bill, said, you know, hey, they're fixing the roads, sorry for the inconvenience. So you ask yourself, why do we need more taxes? You know, when you look at this, there's another bad thing about it. There's a caveat in there. 2/3, they notify the public within 45 days, 2/3 of that committee can increase at any time. 30 years for a tax? It's ridiculous. And let's remind ourselves something else here. The LA Times said they're talking about raising the gas tax 18 cents. You already pay taxes. This is the most ridiculous tax I've ever seen come across. Only 20% would go to the freeways. If Howard Jarvis was alive, he'd be screaming. This is not a good approach. It'd be one thing if it was a 5 or 6 year tax and 80% was going to the freeways, but most of the public that I've talked to says it's ridiculous. You know, what has VCTC done to promote rideshare? You know, they've only promoted it from the 3rd to the 9th, once a year. They haven't done anything to promote rideshare. If you talk to companies locally, they will tell you that nobody's even visited them. So the idea that this is a good tax, it's not. It is what it is. It's a horrible tax. Remember, only 20% it goes to the freeways, 50% goes to the city. You ask yourself a question, how does that math work? It doesn't work. I ask you to vote against that, Measure AA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lomer. Mr. Kildee.
Well, I support this, and as a collector of sales tax, we've collected sales tax for the state of California for over 60 years. I understand that. And I have to also remind everybody it's a sales tax. You don't pay it unless you buy something. 50%, yes, is going to be allocated to the city, and the rest is allocated to the regional roads. The feeling is it's going to raise about $1.65 billion after 30 years. It does sunset after 30 years. We are at 7.5% sales tax now. There's many, many cities in California that are higher than that. This will go up from 7.5% to 8%. There are many cities in the LA that are approaching 10% on this. So we have to remember that. The average Ventura County resident spends 23 hours stuck in traffic in our county. We can do better than this. Can you imagine all the lost productivity with that? The average Ventura County resident will pay somewhere between $30 and $50 extra per year. And another thing that this will allow it to do is the money that it generates, they can actually take that and use that as a base and borrow even more money to improve our roads even more. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, nobody up here is in favor of a tax, but I don't see any other way that we can improve our traffic without this. It's locally controlled and operated here. In my opinion, it's a small price to pay for a relatively large benefit. I encourage everybody to go out and really try to talk this initiative up and see if we can pass it. One of the few counties in Southern California that does not have this. It's not an end-all, but it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Kildee. Mr. Tremblay.
I support Measure AA, and the reason is that, first of all, I don't like taxes, and I don't like tax increases. But right now, Measure AA is the only feasible solution on the ballot during this election cycle. I don't want to wait for another 2 years to address the mess on Highway 101. The freeways are supposed to move people, goods, and services, and do so in an efficient manner. Right now, Highway 101 at many times of the day is not moving people, nor goods, nor services in an efficient way. What does that impact? That impacts our economy. It has adverse impacts on our air quality, and consequently, we all suffer for that. To state that perhaps the deal could have been cut a different way, but as a candidate said, 20% of the funds go to the freeway. But that is not 20%, that's not just 20% in isolation. Not only will there be direct funds from the sales tax, there will also be leveraged funds that VCTC and the county will be able to obtain from both state and federal sources. And so you add those leverage funds on top of the direct funds, and there will be a good amount of money available to do the Highway 101 improvements that we so desperately need. The other thing, I've had a number of employers during this campaign ask me about other things that might be done with that money, and one of the things that I'm particularly intrigued by is to strengthen the transit services between our communities, between Camarillo and Oxnard, Camarillo and Ventura, et cetera. And they note to me that there is a real lack of intercity bus service and coordinated intercity bus services for their employees. So that's another positive impact from this.
Thank you. Mr. Lingle.
So my wife and I are pretty privileged to be in our early 30s, and we bought a house in Camarillo about a year and a half ago. We bought a house on Dunnigan, which is right off of our Neal. And every once in a while, I'll head over to Target, and instead of taking daily, I'll get on the freeway, and I will be stuck. I will be sitting there, and I'm like, why didn't I take daily? So not only does the traffic congestion in Camarillo affect the quality of life for the people that live here, but the EDC says that it's the #1 threat to our economic future in Camarillo and Ventura County. I think we need to widen some of the bridges that go over the freeway in Camarillo. We need an auxiliary lane. And I agree, I don't want to raise the tax burden on any of the people that live in the city of Camarillo. However, we need to leverage the federal and state funds that will be matched in the county to improve this awful traffic congestion. So Measure AA is the only plan on the books that does that. And that's why I'm going to be voting yes on Measure AA.
Thank you, Mr.